I love 30s movies. I love 30s pre-code movies. Those are my favorite, before the Hays censorship code was enforced. I love the famous ones. I love the obscure ones. I love those because they're just so wild. Like, women are allowed to work and behave badly because there wasn't a lot of moralizing going on. The early 30s films are pretty experimental because I think Hollywood was still figuring out what a successful narrative structure was, and it was the very early days of sound. They're very often very weird movies, very wild, very hedonistic. My name is Carolyn Funk, and I have been working as a film projectionist in New York for 20 years. At the moment, I'm a full-time projectionist at MoMA, and I've previously worked at many theaters in the city and museums, including the Museum of the Moving Image, where I was for 14 years, Film Forum, Anthology Film Archives. I've done a lot of work at Lincoln Center Performing Arts and Lincoln Center Film. I work festivals. Sundance I worked at for a long time, Tribeca Film Festival, New York Film Festival. One of my favorite films right now and often is Variety, Betty Gordon, which is about a woman who works in a porn house as a ticket seller in Times Square in the early 80s. It's a noir, but a sort of experimental noir, and Betty Gordon's point of making this film was to reverse the male gaze, which was very popular in film theory at that time. A lot of it centers around this artist bar. And Nan Goldin worked there, and Cookie Mueller hung out there, and so they're all in the movie. It was a feminist bar, so there's all these great scenes of a bunch of women hanging out in this dive bar, sex workers coming in, and at some point the main character goes up into the booth, and there's a projectionist, and so it makes sense that I would love this movie a lot. The job of the projectionist is showing movies, film exhibition, whether that's digital or celluloid. It involves a projector and also sound system. You're usually projecting from a booth where you're separated by glass called a port glass. And you're an operator, it's like you're part of the machine. People aren't really supposed to know you're there. You're just making a seamless presentation for the audience. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and then I went to school in Cambridge and Boston at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts and Tufts University. And then I got my MFA at Cornell University. I became a projectionist when I was in grad school. I'd worked at the Brattle Theater in Cambridge in my early 20s. And, there I did everything from usher, concessions, manager. And the Brattle Theater was interesting because it was the first projection booth I ever saw. And the projectors were behind the screen. So it was rear projection. They used mirrors to reflect the image onto the screen. So that's how I thought projection booths were. And I've actually never seen another one like that since. And I went from Boston to grad school in Ithaca at Cornell, and I was doing displays for Cornell Cinema, and it was an entirely student-run cinema. everybody was graduating one summer, and the head tech basically asked me if I wanted to learn how to project films, and I basically thought I hit the lottery. And then I learned by trial and error. I think he showed me how to thread up film 3 times, and then just let me off into the world, and which you can't learn by trial and error anymore because everything is considered archival. People aren't making thousands of prints of one film, and you can't just burn a hole through a frame. I did that at Cornell for a year, and then I moved to New York City and got a job at Anthology Film Archives the first day that I moved to New York. And that was an amazing place to learn because they are very diligent about teaching all their projectionists very specific archival film handling skills. In a theater like that, anything is thrown at you because it's all this experimental movies. A lot of the equipment is old and, in various condition, things break, and it's all these different formats. It's a great way to get a crash course in showing film. Yeah, being a projectionist is a very solitary job, and that is one of the nice things about it. And it's also one of the weird things about it. It's you spend a lot of time by yourself in a dark room with no windows, with machines. It gives you a lot of time, at least for me. There's just so much you can think about when you're spending 15 hours a day by yourself in a dark room. It's, sometimes it's hard to speak after you leave at the end of the day. Sometimes it's hard to go directly home to your apartment after being alone all day. I think it takes a specific kind of personality to be a projectionist because you really have to be comfortable with spending that much time alone. It's hard to know if projectionists are freaks because they spend so much time alone in a dark room, or if they do this job because they are already freaks. But projectionists are definitely weirdos, and I mean that's one of the reasons I like being in the projectionist union, because it's a very special union, and you're like, wow, we are just a union of freaks. People who are projectionists have gotten into it for so many different reasons. Some people were mechanical, maybe they were a car mechanic, and then this seemed like a kind of natural step to kind of engage and operate these machines. Some people are filmmakers or have that kind of background. There are a lot of creative people who are projectionists, and then there are a lot of people who they did it as a job when they were in high school, and they're still doing it and could care less about films. The machines are very noisy. They're loud, they're big. You can hear it.
All this goddamn noise.
Film projectors, they're mechanical. You can really hear
So much noise.
If something's going not well, you can hear it. You can tell right away if you thread something up and you start the motor and it sounds a little bit off. You're like, okay, what's wrong here?
Noise.
Well, a workday can vary a lot, and it depends. A lot of it just depends on where you're working. At Film Forum, it's a very long day, and you're in the booth the entire day. So you might get there at 9 a.m. for a press screening, and you're basically in the booth until 11 p.m. and you're not allowed to go outside. It's a 4-house booth, so you're running 4 theaters from one booth. So you're really running movies all day long. It's strictly a projection booth theater job. You know, you're also might be inspecting prints at the same time, running special programs. 3 of the houses might be digital, 1 might be film. But that's what a day looks like there. At MoMA, it's very different. You know, it's more of a 9 to 5, and there might be a few movies a day, and then you're doing a lot of checking to make sure all the content is for there later in the week. You might be running print checks for the curators who work there, or running films from the MoMA collection for researchers to look at who are conducting whatever research on a certain artist. It's a pretty diverse job. At the Museum of the Moving Image, there is film projection and running 70 and 35 and 16, and then also maintaining all the galleries at the same time in the museum. So you're not stuck in the booth all day, but you're running around kind of everywhere. It just depends where you're working. The days can look very different. The changeover system is 2 projectors. At the end of the reel, there are 2 sets of cues. You know, they might be a little circle that you make with something called a cigarette burner, which actually isn't used anymore because it's not archival. That actually entails taking a blade and scraping the emulsion off. That's how those cue marks happen. Sometimes cue marks are printed on, and then if a print has no cue marks at the end, we put them on with grease pencils, which are removable, and it's considered archival. So there are 2 sets of cues at the end of every reel, and there's a motor cue and there's a changeover cue, and they're about 8 feet apart. On the motor cue, you start the motor on the second projector, and so the reel on the second projector starts running, and then you've timed it perfectly with the countdown. That when you see the second cue on screen, that's when you do the change. For print inspection, you do this on a rewind bench, which is a table that has a light box in the center of it. There are 2 spindles, and the film goes from one to the other. It's motorized. And then you can run your fingers along the edges of the film to check for any imperfections like broken perforations, bent film, splices, superficial damage like scratches, dust, dirt. I love 30s movie. I love. While I was doing these print inspections, I started noticing the separate frames, and so I started photographing them with my cell phone. They're such beautiful hidden images. Then I was just in a unique position where I handled more films than almost anyone in the world, maybe. It always felt like one of the real joys of the job. So I would often inspect all of the prints. It was so crazy to me to be handling obsolete media when showing film was rare. I think it operates as an interesting archive of repertory cinema in New York City, an unofficial archive. But just like the sheer amount and like diversity of prints that were coming through the theaters that I was working at. Because I have thousands and thousands of these photographs now. And it's just a cool memory of like what I've done with all this time in the booth. There was a time, probably around 2012, when it really seemed like film was going to go away. And it felt like a very forced obsolescence at the time. The studios were so invested in getting rid of film altogether. And I think a lot of that was because of human labor and those kind of costs involved. It was very hard to get prints made, and it was very hard to get them lent, even archival prints. Audiences really demanded to see film, and it didn't totally go away. And what did happen, well, it made the job very hard to learn, and now I do have this obsolete skill, which in a city like New York, there's always been plenty of work because there's a lot of film, but also nobody else can do it, so you can feel kind of trapped in the job. It's a pretty weird thing in that way, because it's harder to teach people because film has changed from being this kind of mass media that can, get marred and damaged and thrown away. It was really considered disposable, to something now it's all of a sudden it's like this precious object, which is so strange to have seen that just in my own career. The medium itself hasn't changed, but the attitude around it has changed. And it has really changed the job. Multiplexes still showed film before 2010, basically. But all those jobs went away, and now the only jobs that are left are for projectionists who do archival reel-to-reel film. But it's still transforming because there is so much film now with the VistaVision screenings that are happening now and all the 70 millimeter and IMAX releases that are on film. And those are shown off of platters like they were in the multiplex days. And so now we need more operators who are able to do that. And we do need to train a workforce who have these skills because, even like people my age, I'm not going to be around forever. And it just seems like at the moment, film is not going anywhere at all, which is pretty exciting, to be honest. I was thinking a lot about the movie Taxi Driver recently, and this kind of idea of like Robert De Niro riding around in his cab, and the city outside of him is sort of this film, this kind of like moving landscape, and he's so enclosed in this vehicle. And the projection booth is a very similar type scenario, and because of that, it feels like a very New York kind of thing to do. Like, the city is out there moving outside, and you're enclosed in this dark room. I don't have the impulse to necessarily go into a movie theater when I'm not working, because if I'm working 60 hours a week, I don't really want to go to my job for fun. That said, when I do go to the movies, obviously it's an experience that I really love. I'll usually go because something is playing on film. Maybe it's a 30s movie that I haven't seen or that I like a lot. I love to go to restaurant bars by myself, and I love to go to movies by myself. And I think those are two of New York's most pleasurable experiences. New York is really a movie city, and it is what people do for fun. Like I didn't grow up that way. There weren't movies that everyone saw and everyone talked about. And I think that's sort of just a part of New York historically that I really love. Showing film is very labor intensive. These days, everything is reel-to-reel film, so you're running film off of the two projectors, and one reel will run on one projector, and then you'll change to the other projector about every 20 minutes. Reels are about 20 minutes long. If you're showing a movie that's 2 hours long, that's usually about 6 reels. So you're doing this reel-to-reel process for that entire time, and then you're rewinding the reels in between. After the movie is done, you're packing them up into their shipping containers, and then before you put it on screen, we do these very in-depth print inspections, which is very standard these days. One reason to do that is so you have all the information you need to show the film properly, which is the sound format, the aspect ratio. You can eyeball if there's any damage to the print and note that, so you know how well it will run through the projector and you're prepared for any problems. If there are any broken perforations. And it's also so both for the distributor or the archive what damage previously exists on the print. And then it's also just nice to let programmers and at times audiences know what kind of condition a print is in. It's very exciting when you have a really beautiful print. So anyway, all of that aspect of showing film is very labor intensive. It's very heavy. It's a very physical job. I am in the IATSE Local 306 Projectionists Union. It was chartered in 1913. Now it's also a big AV union. They merged with Ushers in the year 2000. I love being part of the union. It's basically the only reason we have a middle class now. And it's one of the only ways to make a living wage in New York City. Therefore, it's kind of the only way to live in the city if you're not just already wealthy. I don't feel stuck in New York because of my job. I could not make a living doing it anywhere else but New York. But I think it's more the reverse. New York is where I want to be, and this job makes it possible for me to live in New York. And if I were to move somewhere else, which I don't really want to live anywhere else except for maybe Sicily. Actually, Sicily maybe is the one place where you could be a projectionist and still afford to live there. But yeah, it is. I do feel like it's a pretty, it's a very New York profession. I don't know. It's just a job.
Yeah.
It's really just a job. And for me, and the reason I like being at MoMA is because I really just like the people there. That's what really makes the job. It's cool if I'm handling really cool prints, really beautiful prints, something 30s prints, something I really like, something very rare. That's always a really fun part of the job. I like looking at the prints. But yeah, ultimately, it's the people who make the job, and I like there's something about moving. Whoa.
That must have been the space heater.
Well, I was rolling. So we got that.
meet me on Friday down, down, down in Blue City. Got no address, just a telephone number. Phone me tonight and maybe we can talk dirty. Phone me tonight and maybe we can talk dirty. Sleazy city, sleepy people. Down in your alleys, seems that anything goes. Blue films flicker, hands of a stranger. Getting to know you, and I'm getting to like you. Hey, isn't that you on the screen? Hey, isn't that you on the screen? Isn't that you on the screen?
I also watched Taxi Driver last year.
Yeah.
I was like, is he an incel? It's like,
Dude, I know, right? I did not remember that dynamic at all.
yeah. I was
He's
kinda
definitely an incel.
like,
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, this is kind of gross, actually.
Yeah, but it's very like kind of prescient. It's sort of like, oh wow, this already existed in our culture.